This past weekend, I spent a lot of time at the Ghost Recon Wildlands open beta. In one of my previous videos, I shared my thoughts and opinions from playing the closed beta and technical test. One commenter on that video said I must have thought that the AI was incompetent solely because I was playing on a lower difficulty setting. So this weekend, I played on Ghost, and I was still not impressed. Ubisoft have definitely made a few improvements to the enemy AI since the closed beta, but overall my original criticism still largely stands. The artificial intelligence in this game is garbage. In this video I'd like to share with you why I think Ubisoft's coding is sloppy, cheap, and lazy, and why ultimately Ghost difficulty in Wildlands is a joke. In my closed beta impressions video, which you can find linked in the comments section below or by clicking in the top right hand corner of this video, I made the claim that the artificial intelligence had all the intellect of a plank of wood. Enemies stood out in the open taking potshots at you, walked right past dead bodies and couldn't see you when you were literally 5 feet away from them. You could waltz into a base and start unloading on hostiles with a shotgun and still be rewarded for remaining undetected. I know because I did that, and I showed footage of that in that video. Well, I was called out by one commenter for playing on normal, so during the open beta, I played on Ghost. And what I found was that the enemy AI had gone from being collectively as dense as a bucket of osmium to collectively as dense as a bucket of osmium, and also wildly inconsistent. See, on Ghost, enemies in their unaware state are just as poorly coded as they were in the closed beta. You can drive a minibus within inches of Unidad soldiers, and they might become suspicious that there's a rickety old civilian vehicle with 4 fully grown bearded men wearing ballistic helmets and carrying rifles, but not suspicious enough to actually do anything about it. You can even shoot with a suppressed weapon, a cartel member standing 10 feet away from his buddy, and the buddy won't notice until he turns for his scripted patrol route and stares straight at the body. Even on Ghost difficulty in Montauk, which is a 5-skull region and thus supposed to be one of the hardest regions in the game, I was often able to walk into various enemy outposts, find people casually milling around, shoot them in the face with a suppressed handgun, and then walk away as if absolutely nothing happened, with the enemies completely unaware of my presence. Even when I was starting to be detected in an enemy's peripheral vision, they'd frequently turn away, and they'd never turn around to spot me unless it was part of their scripted patrol, because everyone knows that when you see a potential problem from the corner of your eye, you just ignore it until it goes away. The problem is further compounded by the fact that unless you are in the middle of nowhere with absolutely no buildings, the speed at which enemies detect you on Ghost difficulty is still usually slow enough that you have ample time to find somewhere to break line of sight. There were a few occasions, however, where the enemies just flat out cheated and saw me through walls, terrain, or rocks. The absolute worst offenders of this are enemy snipers who can and pretty much always will spot you even through huge trees, walls, and extremely dense foliage. But if you snuff a shot and miss, or the guard finds his buddy on the floor, the enemy AI in the area will immediately triangulate your exact position and start to charge you. And this really gets into the heart of this video, that the enemy AI is cheap and lazy. See, when I play a Ghost Recon game, or really any military shooter for that matter on its hardest difficulty setting, I expect to fight an enemy that is ruthless but intelligent. I want the enemy AI to work in squads and fan out into the countryside to try and figure out where exactly those shots came from. I want the AI, when it figures out my team's position, to try and outmaneuver, outsmart, and outflank us. I want an enemy that keeps me on my toes, that tries to flush me out of cover with grenades, that uses suppressing and indirect fire to force me to keep my head down while they move to a better attack position. I want AI that forces me to adapt my strategy in the middle of a gunfight. I want enemies that think like people, act like people, fight like people, not what Wildlands currently has, which is the human-shaped equivalent of Super Mario's Goomba that turns into the damn Terminator the instant it goes into its alert state. Wildlands suffers from what I have taken to calling the Call of Duty conundrum. The Call of Duty conundrum is a situation that arises when the developer doesn't have either the time, the resources, the ability, or just the interest to program different enemy AI behavior for higher difficulty levels, yet are faced with the problem that the game still needs to be more difficult on harder settings or, in Wildlands' case, as you progress further through the game. If you've ever played single player in a Call of Duty game, you may have noticed that on the Recruit, the enemies pretty much take half-assed potshots at you as they stand idly out in the open like paper targets at a shooting range. Your character is a bullet sponge and pretty much nothing can kill you in one shot except maybe standing directly on top of a grenade. But once you kick the difficulty up to Veteran, the enemies become hyper-aware. Rather than standing around waiting to be shot, they become much more aggressive. And somehow they always know your position, unless the mission is explicitly coded for a stealth section. Since this increased aggression could make them easier to kill, after all, if they're running straight at you, you could funnel them into a room or a corridor or through a doorway and wipe them all out, the difficulty is balanced out by increasing their accuracy, reducing the player's health, and ensuring that enemy bullets do more damage. Wildlands takes the same tired, lazy approach. Instead of making the enemy AI smarter and work more efficiently as a team as you get into harder difficulty settings or more difficult regions, the game artificially increases the challenge by making the same imbecilic AI cheaper. And just so we're clear here, I'm not making this claim from playing only in Itaqua. I was playing in Muntiok, the hardest region in the game, and the enemy AI logic still behaves the exact same way. They detect you, a call goes out over the radio to charge because they outnumber you, and then they rush your position. In fact, I think that's why there's no blind fire mechanic in Wildlands, because the enemies just rush you and try to run up to you and then run around your cover, and if there was a blind fire mechanic, you could just easily and quickly dispatch them as they run at you in a straight line. But because you have to step out of cover even to hip fire, and then you can be shot and killed in 1 second by the enemy's 100% accurate unaimed gunfire, it slightly obscures the fact that the AI is completely predictable garbage with all the tactical prowess of a block of Swiss cheese. Now, one of the commenters on my closed beta video talked about videos from Ubisoft showing how even squads of good players were being wiped out when they were playing in the harder regions of the game, and how that must be indicative of more difficult AI. And I certainly experienced my share of deaths and mission failures too, but more difficult AI? No. What I noticed in every single instance is that the players lost because Ubisoft had taken the quickest route to artificially inflating the difficulty of the AI, not because the players had made mistakes or been outsmarted. The reason you'll get wiped out almost any time a gunfight starts on Ghost difficulty is because the AI has been given superhuman perfection. One enemy came at me around a corner with a submachine gun and with a quick single burst killed me. I noticed he wasn't looking at me as he rounded the corner. I wasn't even in his vision cone. His gun and his sightline were perpendicular to my position, but as soon as he edged past the wall, he snapped to me, and before I could even react, I was dead. In other instances, I've been sniped at long range by a guy dual-wielding full-auto Mach 11s. That's 1100 rounds per minute times 2, not aiming down the sights, not using a support hand or a shoulder stock to counteract the recoil. In other words, those firearms should have an accuracy of about 0. Yet he's getting hits on me because Ubisoft programmed him that way to make the game more challenging. Now, you know what else didn't improve since the closed beta? Friendly teammate AI. I'm calling it at this point. The AI in the beta is the AI we will see in the final game. It releases in 7 days. They're not going to make sweeping changes at this point. Your AI squad will still run out into the middle of flat, open terrain to engage the enemies. The squad orders are still basically useless. Teammates will still spread out so far that their positions are of absolutely no value to you in a gunfight. Teammates still won't move up when you do, they still won't move when they break line of sight trying to set up a sync shot, and they still sometimes won't engage the enemy in a fight without the explicit order to open fire, and even then, sometimes they just still won't fire. And when you go down in a fight, they'll just disengage the enemy. Why? Because when you go down, the enemy reverts to its search state, and your AI teammates cannot be detected by the enemy AI as a balancing mechanic to prevent them from ruining stealth gameplay. This is extremely problematic because you'll frequently be revived by your AI teammates only to be immediately spotted and instantaneously gunned down by the 4 enemies who are still standing around your last known position, which is now, upon being revived, your current position. Your teammates just don't clear the area before reviving you, which makes it basically useless. Ghost Recon Wildlands releases on March 7th, and I will be live streaming it on day 1 to atone for my sins in a past life. If you enjoyed this video, please consider dropping a like and subscribing to my channel, it really helps me out. Let me know what you think in the comments section below. Thank you for tuning in and watching this video, and I'll see you all next time.